go back. He wants to go back. I want to go back to the farm. Go back far away from home, with a milk pail on my arm. I miss the rooster, the one that used to wake me up at 4 a.m. down on the farm.
I'm Scott Bain. They call me the Old Farmer. Before I begin my epistle on safety, some of you have gotten me in trouble with the head office at Howling Bear Productions. This is from Uncle Buddy Bear, who you see howling at the end. He wants me to push those who have not subscribed to the channel to subscribe. He's yelling at me, folks, saying, why can't I get at least 800 more subscribers? As nice as Uncle Buddy Bear is, you don't want to be around him when he gets an attitude. So help me, folks, so that he won't be explaining the bear facts to me again. I guess that's enough said on the topic. Now on to my epistle. I want to assure you that Stumpy Nubs, James Hamilton, has recovered. This accident by a professional woodworker who understands and strives not only to be safe in the shop, but shows us how to be safer while woodworking, lost partial use of a couple of fingers. Jonathan Katz-Moses had his own mishap in the shop, and he always strives to be safe and show safe. Both have medical kit suggestions, and I added an additional one from the SkinnyMedic to give you an idea of how to build a first aid kit. Links are below. I strongly suggest that you watch these videos even though you may already have a first aid kit. You may learn something. I did. In the meantime, Mrs. Old Farmer and I are in discussions about what to put into a shop first aid kit, besides some good scotch or bourbon. Some of you may remember I had a minor accident in the shop this past year where I got a finger too close to a belt sander and lost some hide. I had a full recovery and did not need to obtain medical attention. It is this approach that I am explaining to you now that helped me keep my boo-boo a minor inconvenience rather than a trip to the hospital. As an example of planning for emergencies, I do have 4 fire extinguishers, 2 in the garage, 1 extinguisher in the kitchen, and we have 1 in the basement attached to the stairs. I still want to get an additional fire extinguishers for upstairs. Depending on what type of fire you have, you may only be able to slow the fire with a typical fire extinguisher, so that additional time can be used to get everyone evacuated. Luckily, every time I've had to use an extinguisher, I was able to put out the fire. Growing up on the farm, I made sure I knew how to use one. At our last home, I was able to knock down a fire at my neighbor's house that was reaching 60 feet into the air and extinguishing it with only a 5-pound all-purpose fire extinguisher, all to the amazement of the local police and fire department. It was a Molotov cocktail in a garbage can, so as to distract police from a group who intended to break into some condos several blocks away. Because of what I did, not knowing the why, but only that there was a fire to be put out, the crooks were caught before they could break into a single condo. As the fire department arrived, they waved and drove on to help support the police if a fire started. If you know what you're doing, you can do a lot with an ABC fire extinguisher, but you can't use one if you don't have one. Get one for every floor or every wing of your house, including basement and one for the garage. Then learn how to use one. It may even save you some cash on your house insurance. All this is putting in place equipment that will help, such as a medical kit and fire extinguishers when you need to react to an emergency. But besides having fire extinguishers, you need a first aid kit for the house and another one in the garage, plus one for your car. There are many videos that can help you design your own first aid kits, or you can purchase one already complete, except for hanging on the wall or mounting in your car. But what happens when something does happen that we are unfamiliar with? We tend to panic or not react rationally. It's built into our brains. Lots of training can overcome this panic, or you can train yourself to push back the time to panic to after the emergency if it's a short-lived catastrophe. How? It's simple. Stick your hands in your pockets. That's right. The instant an emergency happens, stick your hands in your pockets. This is only for 1 to 5 seconds. And this reaction will break the immediate panic effect and allow you a bit of time to handle the emergency. This is true if it's a fire, an automobile accident, or something that happens to you or some loved one. It breaks the panic cycle, but only for a short time, usually for enough time to call for help or accomplish the first step in an emergency. Don't be afraid to call for help. I asked Mrs. Old Farmer to call the fire department because I did not know what I was getting into with that trash can fire. I did know I could at least slow it down. I was lucky that I was able to take it to the smoldering stage by the time the fire department arrived. Back in the first job I had outside of the farm, I worked as a carryout at a grocery and sundry store, something like a Walmart. Soon, I was helping out in the meat department and serving customers and cleaning up after hours. I was taught how to do many of the things needed to serve a customer, such as doing a special grind for a hamburger or running a steak through the tenderizer. Remember the old Wringer washing machine? Think of one with razor blades, sharp teeth all the way around the rollers. It did a good job of tenderizing a steak. One of the full-time butchers got his fingertips caught in the tenderizer. The only way to open up the tenderizer is to pull the rollers off the power spools. Then it could be hinged open. With the fingers caught, the rollers could not be pulled off the spools because it was jammed. This was back in the days where emergency help was an ambulance. There was no paramedics or rescue squad. Being 16 years old, it was up to me to run to the hardware part of the store and pick up a small 1.5 pound sledge and a coal chisel and tap the hinge pin out, and then with a chisel gently hammer the rollers off the spools so that we could get the teeth separated far enough to get the hand out. I knew it would hurt the butcher as I tapped the hinge pin and then the rollers, but there was nothing else to do. It seemed like it took hours, but in reality, it was only a few minutes. I wrapped his fingers in a clean towel, and the ambulance took him to the hospital. The store found out I was only 16 years old and pulled me out of the meat department and placed me in the produce department. You had to be 18 in Michigan at the time to operate machinery. I didn't think anything about it because that's not true on a family farm. Luckily, by sticking my hands in a pocket for a second or two, it gave me the break I needed not to panic or throw up. That happened after the ambulance left and outside by the incinerator. All through my life, I found sticking my hands in my pockets for a second or two during an emergency cleared my head so as not to panic and to do what is needed to be done. One time on the farm, one of the hired hands threw a cigarette in a manure trench behind a cow during milking. Instead of going out, the straw caught fire, and after sticking my hands in my pocket for a second or two, I grabbed a milker can, took the pulsator lid off, and poured the fresh milk onto the fire. Putting my hands in my pocket, literally or figuratively, has given me the reputation of never panicking during an emergency. What folks don't know is I panic afterwards. That is, I have the typical reactions of shaking and confusion after the fact when it doesn't matter. I've taught this little trick to Mrs. Old Farmer and to several others who think it works well for them. When I shaved some hide off my finger, I had the expected adrenaline rush. I could not literally stick my hands in my pocket because one hand was bleeding and the other was clamped down on the damaged digit, but I could do so mentally. You have to make your own decisions on how to do things. This is how I do it. It may not be right for you. My intent is to get you thinking things through. There are more than one right way and more than one wrong way of doing things. It's up to you and only you on how you do things. But on the next minor mishap, try the hands in the pockets for a second or two and see if it helps. I've done it for almost 70 years, and it works well for me. Before I go, let me remind you to visit the links below. At the very least, it will be interesting and will give you something to ponder upon. Well, this is the Old Farmer, Scott Boehm. Be well.
Down on the farm.